Hi everyone. This is Eric Brown, and this is another episode of Line Heat, and I'm here at Salazar's with Chef Jose Salazar in Cincinnati, Ohio. So great. Well, Chef, thanks for having me here.
Yeah,
I
my
love
pleasure.
this space. It's really cool. It's like a really intimate but welcoming restaurant. So what we're here to do basically is hear more about your background
Okay.
and how this all came to be. So I'd actually like to just start with, as I understand, you were born in Colombia, but then were raised in Queens. Worked for some of the well-known chefs and amazing restaurants in New York City, and made your way out west. So I kind of want to go through that story and sort of how we got to this, and then also talk about your other restaurant as well. So,
Absolutely. Cool.
So yeah, we'd love to learn. Like, did you grow up with like a big? Was your family big into food or
Absolutely
no?
not.
Absolutely not.
Yeah,
Okay.
I sometimes I can't even believe that I became a chef because
Yep.
no, cooking wasn't. I to some degree, yes. When I was very young, my grandmother cooked a lot. She cooked for the family, so it wasn't anything. You know, she had 9 kids.
Yeah.
My mother's one of 9 kids, and so, she was a good cook.
Yeah.
But it was just hearty fare. Certainly not the kind of stuff that you would think would be restaurant worthy per se.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But anyway, she was a really good cook. But growing up, my mother, she was a single parent. She wasn't a very good cook, and she would admit it. You know, she said that she was just lucky if she didn't burn something. And
Okay.
it was edible.
Sure.
But you know what? Like there's little bits and pieces of my memory as a kid where I kind of was, into food, but I didn't become, it wasn't really obvious until I started working in restaurants that, there was something inside of me that really gravitated towards food and cooking.
Was there like a particular meal or something that your grandmother or your mother made that like stuck with you, like that you kind of go back to, or?
That's kind of in a negative way. My mother used to make beef tongue.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I love it today.
Yeah.
But I was freaked out by it as a kid. And she put the whole tongue on the plate. Like she didn't cut it
even
up.
try to hide it.
No, it was like, here's tongue. And I remember she would make me sit there and like eat some of it anyway. And it would take forever. I mean, it'd be like I'd be there for like an hour or like an hour and a half, and finally, after I took a couple bites, she'd let me get up from the table, and she'd be super disappointed because I could tell how much she enjoyed it,
Yeah.
but I didn't. And now today, it's one of my favorite foods.
Now,
So
when
there's-
she prepared this, was there like a sauce involved, or was it like
pretty
roast,
basic. It was like white rice and tongue
Okay,
and
yeah.
a little bit of
Yeah.
like chopped tomato or something. It was very, very simple. But I feel bad. I feel kind of a little embarrassed that I
Yeah.
didn't give it a chance. That
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Just,
You were young. What are you gonna do, right?
yeah, but it's like I wish I had the maturity to say, okay, let me try this,
Yeah.
and then I probably would have enjoyed it as much as I do today, and then I'd have this memory of like enjoying this wonderful dish.
Yeah.
Even though she probably didn't prepare it with like the most, there was no intricate sauce, there wasn't a ton of seasoning. But I remember it being tender. I remember her at least cooking it long enough.
Oh, okay.
And I probably would have enjoyed it had I given it a
Sure.
chance.
Sure.
But my grandmother, she made fresh arepas.
Oh yeah.
So like she'd mill them by hand, and
Really?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff was still, and I would imagine to this day, even just a couple years ago when I went to Colombia, my family was still milling the hominy fresh, and it has a better texture.
Yeah.
And it's not heated up by any mechanical stuff, and they're just so fresh and beautiful, just like a perfect tortilla when it's freshly made. That's kind of an arepa but thicker, so and there's the aroma that comes out of it. So.
And then were they filled with cheeses? Or
No, so in Venezuela they fill them with cheese. In Colombia we put stuff on top.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And
Okay.
So
yeah.
the most common way for breakfast is to just put lots of butter, lots of salt,
Okay.
and maybe a little bit of like queso fresco, like farmer's cheese. and that's
board there,
one of
yeah.
my favorite things, and that's one of my favorite memories is making them fresh, making them hot, and then you just little hot chocolate or coffee to go along with it.
So these are, you know, very approachable traditional things that very early memories, and then at some point, like, so you developed a liking for some of these foods or just food in general, and so where did that, you got into the restaurant scene, right? And working both front and back of
I
the
started
house?
working in the front.
Yeah.
And that was really just, out of high school, I needed a job.
Okay, fair
So I
enough.
started bartending, and
Yep.
I didn't take the job because I thought I wanted to work in restaurants. I took the job because I needed a paycheck.
Right.
And over the course of, a year or two, I kept finding myself more interested in what was going on in the kitchen than what was going on behind the bar.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got out of restaurants for a couple years and did a bunch of random jobs, but found myself needing a job again. Went back to serving and waiting tables, and that's when I really kind of realized, okay, I really really enjoy what's going on back there. I want to see more. I want to kind of get behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So I had a friend who was working in a kitchen, and he said, well, you talk about it all the time. Why don't you just come in and hang out with us and see if it's something you like? And that's basically how I got my start. It was in a little Cajun restaurant in Queens
Okay.
called Bourbon Street.
Yeah.
Very sort of generic.
Yeah, sure.
But the food was great. It was, very, very popular neighborhood kind of restaurant, and it was a good inauguration into what it was going to be to be a line cook. It was like one of those hardcore, super, super hot, very intense, busy kitchens. So I was like, oh shit, now I see what this is all about, and I loved it. And I was like, okay, this might be the right thing for me.
So what was that like? Like you basically crossed the line, right? And now you kind of go to the other side, right?
No, I'm just kidding.
No, but I mean, actually, there is this sort of divide, right, between front and back of the house in many places.
There is,
So you were able to make that transition. Like, were the people that you were working with like, what are you doing, or was it like an easy thing to do?
No. I think they could sense that I wasn't all that thrilled with being in the front of the house.
Yeah.
Today I think I would probably be okay in the front. But I didn't have that like. I mean, I was caring and I was hospitable, but it was like a little bit forced, you know what I mean? I think you either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
It's one of those like you're probably cut out for one or the other, and it's just a personality thing. I think my personality was more geared towards being in the back, and it's I think it was understood that that's probably where I needed to be.
No, and it was like a loud kitchen. Was there like loud music and all
there
that?
Wasn't a ton of loud music. It was, there was music, and it was fun, and it was loud because it was busy. We were just like, it was a constantly moving, a lot of moving parts.
Right.
Just one of those, and the energy was amazing. In fact, the chef owner, his name is Joey Campanello. He had no Cajun background. He was Italian American.
Okay.
Went to CIA, so he.
Oh, okay.
I mean, he was like brilliant chef, but I think they chose the concept because there was a lack of that stuff going on in Queens.
Sure,
There was plenty of Italian restaurants they could have opened, but they would have been one of many, and so they decided to do Cajun food, and he would keep buckets of ice water on the side of the line, and if it got too hot and you felt like you were gonna faint, he'd tell you to put your arms in the ice water. Because you gotta imagine, to do Cajun food, you have to have cast iron pans that are just hot all the time. So you have stacks and stacks of them, and the flames are just roaring all the time, and it was pretty intense.
Wow.
And I did it, like you put your arms in there, and it just cools down your veins.
Yeah.
And you're good to go back to work.
So I imagine people just lost lots of weight just working on the line there, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I worked that grill, and it was like a 48-inch grill, and it was just super, super hot, and the ceilings were really low. The ventilation wasn't great, but I loved it, man. It's like if I tell you all these things, they sound like negatives, but to me, in my mind, I was like, I love this. Like, how do I get more of this, and how do I learn?
So it clicked right there, and you knew. Okay. Yeah. So how long did you stay there, or then you like moved on from there?
So I did that while I was going to culinary school.
Yeah.
So culinary school was pretty brief. My school was only like a year and change. So I think I was there for about a year and a half or so, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you went. Where did you go next?
So I did my internship or externship, whatever you want to call it, at John George, John George von Richten's namesake restaurant. And then after that, I got hired to work at a place called Town. It was Jeffrey Zakarian, who was now an Iron Chef, pretty big name.
Totally, yeah.
And he was a pretty big name in New York at the time, and it was a great restaurant. It was very busy. It was shortly after they opened. It had 3 stars from the New York Times, and we were jamming. We were just like, it was another one of those like super busy restaurants, but the food was a little bit more, it was a little more escalated type of French, American kind of stuff, and it was a big learning experience for me.
Now, is there a difference, I guess, like can anyone that has this passion and maybe some skill kind of jump into a restaurant like that, or is there culinary school, like did that set you up for it, or how did you make that transition?
I don't think culinary school is necessary.
Okay.
It certainly gives you a base, right?
Yeah.
And it helps. But my advice to most young people who want, or if you're older and you want to transition into being a chef, I don't know. I probably steer them away from culinary school because of the cost. Because you're going to incur a lot of debt, and cooking in restaurants is not a get rich quick thing. So and if you go to the right places and you find people who want to teach you, you could pick up a lot of that stuff and get a couple books. I would say get yourself a textbook, the same books that they would give you in culinary school. Read through those so you get an understanding of the theory anyway, and then you can put that into practical use when you get into restaurants.
So when you get into a restaurant, let's say your first place is, it could be an Italian restaurant or any type of cuisine, I would say like culinary schools maybe give you like a survey of a lot of different things. If you find yourself working in an Italian restaurant, are you missing out on certain skills, or is it more about where you work and the mentorship that you're getting from the chef in terms of developing your skills and sort of seeing things with a bigger picture versus these are the 20 dishes that we make?
Yeah, I mean, sure, you're gonna have sort of a little bit of blinders on if you're cooking in a very traditional restaurant that does traditional Italian food per se. But culinary school, you might do Asian for 1 week, and Asia's a huge continent. so there's only so much you're gonna learn in culinary school, and even if your culinary school was Italy for a year, you'd still have so much more to learn, right? I mean, there's I don't know, 1,000 different shapes of pasta.
Right.
How are you gonna, what I mean? Just pasta alone.
Yeah.
So yes, again, it gives you a little bit of a foundation. You'll have some basic understanding of Chinese sauces, maybe.
Right.
But are you gonna be a skilled chef? Like, are you gonna be able to open a Chinese restaurant when you get out of culinary school? No way.
Right.
So ultimately, it's the experience that you gain with somebody who can teach you. So if you want to cook, I think at some point every cook has to make a decision, like, where do I want my focus to be? Because you could learn a bunch of different techniques and a bunch of different cuisines, but if you really want to get great at one, then you have to kind of dedicate yourself to studying that one.
Sure.
And it could be multiple. I mean, you could be proficient in French and Italian and Chinese, but you'd have to dedicate a good block of time or energy to learning those cuisines properly, right? You know what I mean? Like,
So before, I mean, like, I would say maybe 10 years ago, it could be 15 years ago, it could be off on the timing. I think it was probably maybe more common for people to say, all right, I'm going to France or I'm going to Italy to go train, or even Spain, right, more recently.
Yeah.
And now I think maybe just because there's so many of those chefs who have come back and with different skills and influences, maybe people don't even need to leave the U.S. if you're in the U.S., right?
Yeah.
I mean, what are your thoughts around that? Like, do people need to? are you an advocate of going to like another
I think
country?
so. Like
Yeah.
I would do that versus culinary school.
Yeah.
So let's say culinary school's, this hypothetical, but let's say culinary school's 30 grand.
Yeah.
Right? I would take maybe a third of that. So
Yeah.
you're saving yourself 20 grand.
Yeah.
Take a third of that and travel and go experience culture, not just cooking in a restaurant, but get to know the culture
Sure.
because that's gonna, and the history, that's gonna really probably give you more insight to the food than reading it in a book. But you'll still be able to learn reading it in a book. So if you want to learn, do you have to travel? No. There's a lot of resources in the States these days, and you can almost any city, small, medium, large, you're gonna have folks who are doing really, really, really good
Right.
stuff. And so maybe you live in a small town in Wisconsin or something.
Yep.
Well, there's probably within 100-mile radius there's going to be somewhere somebody who can teach you a lot of what you need to know.
So when you were at, say, town or other places, I mean, did you have that level of mentorship, or was there a lot of ownership on by yourself to like say, all right, this is what I need to learn to kind of move up the ladder?
Yeah. I mean, each place is a little different,
Yeah.
and some you had more mentorship than others.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the onus is on you. I mean, you're right. I think there's a lot of stock put into, who mentored you, and
Right.
But like, did you put forth the effort to be mentored? Because I know that I teach the guys who want it more. I'm going to invest more in the kid who's intrigued and is there and shows that he wants that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right, totally.
So you have responsibility as the cook, or as the student,
Right.
to put forth the effort to be mentored.
All right. No, that's fair. So just so I understand like the chronology of things, like you were at town, and then did you then go to Per Se after that? Or?
I shortly after,
Yeah.
I went and helped. There was a guy that I worked with at town. He was the sous chef. We became really good friends. He got a job in Stockton, New Jersey, where he was gonna take over this beautiful inn built in like the early 1700s. It's called the Stockton Inn. Really, really, really cool place, right outside of Philadelphia. And he said, "Hey, can you come down and help me run this place?" He's like, "It's a big undertaking," and so I did. I went 5 days a week. I would stay in Stockton, and it was an inn, so I had a room, and I cooked with him, and then I would go home on my 2 days off. I'd drive back up to New York. It was only about an hour and a half.
Okay.
And that's actually how I got the job at Per Se, because there was somebody in Stockton, New Jersey, a guy named Max who did smoked salmon, who was friends with somebody that was going to be opening up at Per Se.
Yeah.
There's a guy by the name of Joshua Schwartz. They were, buddies. They'd worked together, blah, blah, blah. And so ultimately, I was like, well, I'm not going to stay in Stockton, New Jersey forever. So
Right.
I'm going to be going back to New York when you guys open up. I'd love to be a part of it. And there you go. So I got hired at the opening of that.
And so you're at an opening or a restaurant has all eyes on it, like a lot of pressure.
Crazy. It was amazing. That was, today I think it's very common with social media and just how much is written about new restaurants. But, at the time, I don't know that there'd ever been a more highly anticipated opening.
Right.
It was pretty intense. There was a lot of pressure. Yeah, I think that's what you're getting at.
Well,
probably.
yeah. So like how much time? So I mean, it's not like you just showed up one day and you open the next day. Like there's a lot of training and thought that goes into the restaurant.
Couple months. Yeah.
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 Wow. Okay.
Yeah, probably about probably 6 weeks, I'd say, before, from like when I got hired to when we opened up, and there was, all the chefs from the French Laundry and Chef Keller, and everybody was there, and it was like an army. It was like the military. It was pretty cool.
That's great. And so you while working there, then you get other opportunities to go help open Bouchon.
Yeah. So we opened up Bouchon. It was right around 3 years after Per Se had opened.
Right.
Mhm.
So, talk to me about that. I mean, because I think you can do your thing, stay in your lane, right? But like you're saying, there's this element of sort of seizing the opportunity and saying, I want it, right? And it seems like you consistently have been saying, this is what I want to do, or finding a way to get new opportunities along your career to like go to the next level.
Sure. Yeah. It was Bouchon Bakery, so it's even so. There's Bouchon, which is this kind of bistro. Bouchon Bakery had like bistro fare, but it was also a bakery, and I was working in the savory side of it. But it was very casual. I mean, it was like soups and salads and sandwiches, and so it was a huge departure from what I was doing. But before we turned the camera on, I was telling you how important it is to build flavors and textures, and even in something as simple as a sandwich.
Right.
And I really, I saw the emphasis was just as high, or it was just as important to make that sandwich,
right,
as perfect as the veal with the truffles and the foie gras. It was the balance has to be there, the seasoning has to be there, the textures, the right amount of stuff. You put too much vinegar in the dressing or whatever it is for the salad, then it's not going to be balanced. And even that might even be tougher because you have very few things. You have a very simple dressing with greens and maybe a couple of elements, so you don't have nothing to hide behind.
Right.
It's super important to have the fundamentals.
So at what point, like you have built a successful career in New York, you're building a name for yourself, and then you get an opportunity out here at the Palace Hotel, right? Like, how does that go? I mean, you're uprooting, and also you're kind of potentially an unknown coming into a new city at a place that,
Well, I mean, in all honesty, I was pretty much an unknown in New York too, because I was still, making my way. I hadn't really been running a kitchen of my own at that point. But my son was born. He was a toddler, or an infant, I'm sorry, I should say. And my wife and I both kind of busting our asses to get to and from and pick him up from daycare. And we just looked at each other one night. Neither one of us had ever discussed it before or thought we would live outside of New York, because that was home and that's where all our family was. Right. But I think I brought it up, or I can't even remember, but I just know we just said to each other, like, what if we move? Like, why don't we? Like, there's got to be places that are a little bit easier to have to raise a kid. And so I just started putting out some resumes, and I thought we'd stay on the East Coast. Somehow someone here got it was a recruiter who got my resume, and the rest is history. I didn't really ever consider it the Midwest. But the opportunity came a knocking, and I got the opportunity to do my own food and try to make a name for myself. But more than anything, it was about having a little bit more time with the family.
So you've got years of experience in learning and perfecting your skills, your craft. You're working at this great opportunity, and then not one day, I'm sure over a series of days, you decide, all right, I'm going to do my own thing, right? Yeah. Now, I think maybe just because of Food Network or just the media, and people or great home cooks, you say, well, I want to do my own thing someday, right? Yeah. You have years of experience to say, well, I can do this as well, and all the stuff that no one even sees behind the scenes in terms of food costing and operations and management and all this stuff that go into it, right? So how did this become the reality that you're, all right, I'm gonna open up a place?
Man. It was, I talked myself out of it 100 times. Okay. And then eventually talked myself back into it, because I had been a part of seeing other restaurants open. I between these jobs that we talked about, I had, I worked for the Blue Ribbon Company, and we opened up restaurants and so, per se. But I've seen quite a few openings, and I've also seen many of my friends who, or just people in our industry who didn't make it, and
Yeah.
how fickle and short-lived, a restaurant can be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was very, very apprehensive about doing it. But what convinced me was just you don't want to regret not doing it too. You don't want to turn around and say, I should have. And so I took the plunge, but it was, I'll be honest, I was hoping we'd succeed, but I was bracing for if we did it. I was like, okay, if we don't, what am I gonna do?
Right.
I was kind of already planning Plan B in my brain.
Fair enough. And so you are also, I guess what I've learned is like an up and coming neighborhood too, right?
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
another twist into the whole.
Well, this block we were the only ones.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the street lamps didn't even work. We got broken into a couple times.
Okay.
People were getting mugged.
Yeah.
Some of the employees were, it was pretty rough. There was fights. There was somebody who OD'd right in front of the restaurant while driving and ran the stop sign and crashed into the side of the building across the street. So, it was
This is the real story here
that's
behind
the
restaurant
real
ownership.
story.
Right?
Yeah, so you get the phone call at 3:30 in the morning that the alarm company calls you and says, there's been a break-in or there's a window shattered, and sure enough, the front door's got a big brick thrown through it. And so, that's part of, that's all I could afford.
Yeah.
Eric. That's all I had.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
So it's like,
Yeah.
you gotta, if you're gonna do it, you gotta say, I'm gonna commit to being a part of the revitalization. But yeah, today you see there's, it looks like a nice bustling little neighborhood, and it's a great place. We were thrilled to be a part of this community. But it was a little rough.
But you didn't just open up and all of a sudden people started pouring in. Like, so there's this other business savviness that goes into, I'm opening a restaurant in a place that I'm the only one, and it's not necessarily the best neighborhood, and I got to get people to come here.
Yeah, that was a challenge because people were afraid.
Yeah.
Especially the people with money and the ones that you want to be your patrons, but. That takes some convincing. So you have to be a little bit of a. So now I'm a chef, but now I got to learn how to market and how to be, sort of a tour guide or to like say, hey, it's not that bad, and at the same time when the news cameras are around the block saying something happened, it's like that's very that's not. It could happen anywhere, you know what I mean? So you have to, you have to really convince people to take that leap of faith. And luckily, we had enough people that said, "Okay, well, we'll give it a shot." And like literally, people would pull up in front sometimes and just like run in the door. But that's just part of it, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. And so you open.
I make it sound so much worse than it wasn't that bad, but people's perception was that it was bad. And yes, we got broken into a couple of times, and yes, a couple of people got mugged.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it was not that bad. It was a relatively safe neighborhood, and it's a very safe neighborhood today.
But as you've seen success, then you decided, well, I'm going to open up another place.
Yeah.
So then now beyond the marketing and the chef skills, now you're becoming like this restaurateur basically. Like you can't be in two places at once, right? So what's that like?
Well, that's like a whole nother learning curve. That's now really understanding how to delegate better and how to manage costs better when you're not there, because when I'm there, I can say, hey, this, we can save money if we do this, or but you have to empower people to do those things for you and to teach them how to do those things and to sort of be you when you're not there, and to be your eyes and ears. So took a little while to figure out how to do that, and I'm still figuring it out. It's been, the second one's been open 3.5 years, and I'm still like, kind of like, oh man, why did, like, just the other day we opened up on a holiday, and it's slow every year, that holiday.
Yeah.
I don't know why I didn't decide to just close, but I mean, it's silly, but there's just things like that you say, well, okay, that I learned from that, and it's a constant learning curve, or there's a, just I'm sure like any industry, you kind of, there's some of it that you're just, playing it by ear and learning as you go.
So for people who haven't had the opportunity to experience your food, like, how would you describe that, I guess, in terms of the 2 locations and...
Right.
Yeah.
So we're at Salazar, and it's pretty eclectic. I originally was building it out to be a sort of a bistro, or inspired by the bistro, and aesthetically it is. And some of the menu items are a little bistro-ish. But it's kind of morphed into more of a eclectic American restaurant. So where we used to, and I don't know why. I mean, but it's just because I think I get bored.
Yeah.
And I get really, really tired of like pigeonholing myself into this or that, and that's why I built it with the intent of we can put whatever we want on the menu. So we have things like a fried oyster slider with kimchi, to a bread snapper dish that's very Spanish influenced with romesco and almonds, to we have this salmon dish that's got like an everything bagel crust on it. It's kind of like whatever we want to cook, you know, and there's no boundaries geographical, which is really, really fun, and the cooks enjoy it. And the guests like it too, because they know that they're going to come in and get, and it's not fusion, because we're not taking like, Japanese and Mexican cooking and sort of trying to make it work. But we might have a dish that's Japanese inspired, and we might have a dish that's Mexican inspired. But it still, I think, reads very, like not convoluted, or it comes across, I hope, it comes across as being very intentional, and it makes sense. And most of the menu is still sort of got some sort of like a French American kind of something going on there, or at least the techniques are very sort of Frenchy. And then the other restaurant is called Mita's, and it's Spanish and Latin American. And kind of by saying Latin America, the same thing, I kind of opened up this very broad interpretation of what Latin America is, because Brazil and the Caribbean and Peru and Mexico and Argentina, and then Spain, and we take some flavors from North Africa because it's right there, and it's Spanish food so influenced by North Africa. So we have even some dishes that are very Asian. There's the chifa and the neki cuisine that's prevalent in Peru and other parts of South America. And so, we might have an egg roll on the menu, but it's got, you're still tying it in with like an ají amarillo, which is a Peruvian chili pepper. So it makes sense, it's again, just so that we don't get bored, we keep it pretty.
I mean, you must have an intense library to be able to refer to with all these different concepts and things that you're working on.
Yeah, so absolutely. So again, I made some very specific choices early in my career. So I worked in Japanese restaurants, like I said, the Blue Ribbon Company. I also worked at a place called 15 East, which is predominantly a sushi restaurant. It's very well known for its sushi, which is amazing. But the hot side of the kitchen, we also did some really interesting stuff. And I've studied other cultures and other cuisines, and it's funny because I never cooked Latin American food, so I had to teach myself how to do it. I said, this space was available, and they said, well, do you want to take the space? What do you want to do in here? And I was like, I don't know. I certainly didn't want to do something that was gonna, be similar to Salazar, because I didn't want to, sort of cannibalize myself, right? And so I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I was like, well, what's the city? What does the city need? and I thought Latin American and also would be a way to tie into my roots, my Colombian roots. But I'd never made an empanada, or at least not in a professional kitchen.
Yeah.
I made a handful of them in my home. I had to learn I had to study pozole. I had to, there was a huge amount of research and development that I had to do to just feel even like I could open the doors and not embarrass myself.
Sure.
And I had to call family in Colombia and say, so what's how much of this and how much of that?
Yeah, right.
And like, am I bastardizing it if I put this in there versus this? Because
Right.
I also wanted it to be a little bit slightly elevated,
Mm-hmm.
not pretentious, but so we use short ribs in the empanadas as opposed to just like ground beef, and so I asked them like, is that okay? They're like, oh yeah, that's fine, So, but it was intimidating. I made pastas and all the French food, and I was very adept at I could make agnolotti with my eyes closed,
Right.
But I didn't know how to make an arepa properly, so it was kind of interesting.
So what would you say, sort of just thinking about, lessons for people that were looking to either get in the industry or are in the industry looking to advance their careers? So biggest challenges as a chef owner, and then, any advice that you'd want to give somebody.
Okay,
Yeah.
do I have to look at the camera?
Well, whatever. I mean, you can.
I'm just
This is what you should do.
Don't get into. No, I'm just kidding. What?
You'd be surprised. I hear that a lot from people. Just don't do it. It's such a hard life.
I would say follow your heart.
Yeah.
So, just know that it's a hard life, though.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the biggest mistakes is the food networks, or and some of these other, the media, whatever you want to call it, glamorizes our industry.
Yeah.
And it's not. It can have its moments,
Yeah.
And one of the most exciting things is seeing people happy. And so, you're throwing this party essentially, right? And you see all these people laughing and having a good time. I don't know if that's glamorous per se, but that's the rewarding. That's one of the big rewards of being a restaurateur. But there's a ton of work and a ton of stress.
Yeah.
And I have less and less hair because of it. So, what was the question? I kind of
lessons learned, or things that are challenging, I guess, day to day that people may not necessarily know.
I mean, it's everything. It's did the dishwasher show up? Did the oven guy repair show up? Or
Right.
how much is he gonna charge me this time because it was Saturday night?
Because service must go on, right?
Yes.
You have to constantly
absolutely,
problem solve, yeah.
absolutely. The oven seems to always want to break down on Saturday night for whatever reason. Monday morning, no, it works just fine. There's so many challenges. The margins are super, super thin in our industry, so you have to be very savvy as to how to write a menu, how to staff it, and still not cut corners to the point where you can't cut corners.
Right.
You have to deliver a great product, and that's first and foremost.
Yeah.
Then you have to figure out how to make it feasible to take home a paycheck.
Right.
So my advice is put in the work. I think when people get cocky a little bit and think, oh, well, it can't be that hard, know that it's probably a lot harder than you, and even if you think you know what you're doing, which that's kind of the point I was at when I was opening. I was like, I said to myself, I think I kind of know what I'm doing to open a restaurant, but I also was saying to myself, but there's a lot of stuff you don't know, and a lot of just even if you do everything textbook, there's still so many pitfalls and so many places to fail. But that shouldn't necessarily discourage you from doing it if you love it, if it's something that you're passionate about, and if you're willing to put in the hard work. And that's not like, that's like a legitimate. I've worked many 100-hour weeks, and that's just part of it. That's just
right.
you have to kind of give into that. That's what it is, and you can't like complain about it or be like, oh, woe is me, because that's what you sign up for. You have to understand that that's what you're signing up for. But then I also have on the good side, or the flip side of that, is I have the liberty, the flexibility of, I can dictate a little bit of what my schedule is going to be to some extent, or I have the freedom to put, the oysters with the kimchi and the salmon with the everything bagel on the same menu because it's mine. It's like, and I kind of, live and die by those decisions, and sometimes they're not the right ones, but at the end of the day, they're mine, and I get to own them, and I get to say at least I did it on my terms.
So with all these things,
Isn't that like a Tina Turner song or something like that?
but actually, I don't know. Sorry, I don't know.
I don't know. But it sounds like it could be.
It could be, totally. With all these things, the pluses, the minuses, whatever you want to call them, challenges and opportunities, how does social media play? Like, does that add like another layer of complexity, right?
Yeah.
Not perfectly cooked, whatever meal, all of a sudden, boom, somebody's got it up on
Instantly,
Instantly,
yeah. This is something you adapt to.
Yeah.
To something that, just another part of our industry.
Yeah.
Another thing that you have to manage and deal with, and really, it's us kind of saying, well, we're very sorry, and what can we do to make it up to you? And so it's similar as to if someone came in, and that's what we hope. We hope that they address the problem there and then, so we can fix it.
Right.
Legitimately make whatever was wrong right. And that's what I would hope that most people take away from that. But if they don't, then we'll say, hey, what can we do to make it up to you? We screwed up. We're very, very sorry.
Right.
That's never our intent.
Right.
That would be ridiculous for anybody who's like, oh well, if it's not right, who cares? And if somebody notices, who cares? No, absolutely not. We strive to make every single person walk out the door happy, and you're gonna miss the mark sometimes, and you just hope that they'll give you a second chance.
Right.
And if they don't, then it's unfortunate, because that really hurts me inside. Like that's one of the things that really it's super challenging, because I legitimately, seriously want everybody to have a great time. Again, it's like throwing a party in your house, and you don't want your guests, going away dissatisfied. Right? Especially if they're paying money.
Right.
Right. You throw one at your house, you're not charging people to get in, but
Fair enough.
You're charging them money, and they should get what they pay for.
Well, I appreciate the time here. I've learned a lot. I really enjoyed hearing your story. So how can people, learn more about you or find out more about you?
Yeah. Well, if you're in Cincinnati, come to check us out. Salazar OTR is our website, our www.salazar, and then Mita Cincinnati as well, and we're on Instagram and Facebook and all that. So I'm sure people can find us.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for your time.
All right.
Great to meet you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.